Alright, what's going on YouTube? I hope you guys are having yourselves a fantastic day. Today, we're going to be kicking back and making a nice sci-fi city or a utopia sort of ordeal. I'm a big fan of like futuristic movies and futuristic sci-fi sort of stuff. I'm a big fan of Star Wars. Some games that I like are Destiny, Halo, those kind of games. So, as an artist, I wanted to create something like that of my own. Now, I wouldn't compare this exactly yet to those legendary titles. However, that was my kind of inspiration and reference kind of moving into creating this. Actually, another reference that a friend recommended to me was Xandor from Guardians of the Galaxy. That was actually a great reference. So to get started, I just laid out a big plane and wanted to kind of lay out a very base look just to get an idea of where to start. Something coming into this little project that I learned that was new to me was the asset browser. So I was actually able to use a lot of the buildings that I have previously made. But the asset browser has always been something that I've seen in tutorials that looks very nice, but also intimidating to set up. So I've always kind of pushed it away. So with our asset browser, I went ahead and brought in our spaceship from our previous video, if you want to go ahead and check that out. And I pretty much started with a nice little like landing dock into our sci-fi city here. Something interesting that comes up when I make stuff like this is I get an idea, but I sometimes don't think of the logistics of it. With something like a sci-fi city, it doesn't really matter because I could just say whatever. It's like a material that's special material from a planet that allows things to float or whatever. But like making this landing dock and having the little part come out to the door, I was just thinking like if an engineer comes across this, man, it's going to be hard to watch, but that's okay because it's not for an engineer. It's just funny to think about some of the logistics when making some of this stuff. Like, thank the universe, they did not put me in charge of making our actual cities. Actually, no cap, I'd probably be pretty good at making a city because I'd put like cool stuff like what I'm dropping in right here on there. Basically, this is just a sphere with the wireframe modifier as well as a subdivision surface. It kind of gives that cool looking Swiss cheese holy look. But yeah, I'd put like cool monuments like this stuff all over town just because I could if I was running this. Alright, so now we got a little bit of now we have a little bit of a plaza going on here. We're gonna come back way later, maybe even in a separate video, and do like some finer details. Moving on to some of the bigger buildings here. Most of them are just made out of cubes and then just insetting, is that the right word? I don't even know. Hitting the I button and then extruding inwards on certain faces of the buildings to give a different look. And then with the subdivision surface, it kind of rounds everything off. The architecture is much different than obviously our normal buildings here. Another topic I was thinking about while making this, kind of similar to what I was trying to explain with like the logistics sort of thing, is what kind of animals would live here. Because I was going to put some birds flying in the background at some point, but then I was like, would there even be birds here? Now, in my utopia, I'd want there to be animals. But then I was like, would they be like futuristic animals that are kind of robots now? Or would they just be normal birds? So, in the end, I was going to put like cows in the field too, in the grassy hills. But again, I was like, would they be like robot cows? Or like half cyborg cows? And then I just started overthinking and to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm not going to put animals. That would be weird, man. Like, there's a lot of cows in the area I live in real life. Like, I can't imagine like driving by and like half of their face be like Cyborg from Teen Titans. Oh gosh, be the invasion of the robot cows, man. Anyway, sorry about that huge tangent there. My initial plan for kind of the outer skirts city, just kind of like the extra stuff, was to put some of our buildings in there, some of our other buildings that I haven't used yet, and then use a particle system, which is just cheese, just easy. The problem is I just couldn't get it to look how I wanted it to look because I don't know enough about like the particle and hair system. I'm still very new with that as well. So just kind of chalked that up, but I'll show a little bit of my attempts here. It definitely helped me get more of like the cluttered city look, like from Star Wars when they're flying over Coruscant and stuff. You just see buildings after buildings after buildings. You don't really see the ground until they like go on the ground. So that's initially kind of what I wanted to go for. We didn't really end up getting to that point, just being honest right here. I don't want to spoil anything, but we'll play with it in the future more. With like the particle system, try to get that a little bit more dialed into how I want things to look. So to sort of make a modified version of what we just saw without the particle system, I just used the array modifier and just made multiple copies of those groups to try to get that clustered city look just a little bit, get some buildings closer up. And actually looking back while making this recording, I don't think the city actually looked as bad as I thought when I first made it. But you live and you learn. Hindsight 2020. So I just started placing some of these buildings randomly around this platform that I have set up for our base city. One thing that was nice too is a lot of these buildings I'd place them as, their buildings, and then I would take them and play with the modifier and squish them up, twist them more, or just remove some of the modifiers in general, and boom, you have a full new building just built off of something that we already have made. So this is why the asset browser is super nice for me. Also, I used to just append collections in. It just saves that extra few seconds, and in the long run it adds up. But these buildings are so much more fun, in my opinion, than kind of driving around some of these big cities in real life. Man, you got stuff that's twisty. Again, the logistics aspect I get, probably, I don't want to say impossible in real life, but right now it's probably incredibly expensive and not efficient to do. But man, just some of these buildings that I made, I'm like, man, can you just plop one of these twisty buildings somewhere in the middle of San Francisco or somewhere around there? Come on, man. It'd look weird, but it'd be cool. So for the specific scene that I had in mind, I knew that I wanted our spaceship flying over land into the city, and I for sure had the idea to fly through a mountain range. I thought this was going to be really hard because sometimes when I use the landscape generator, I can never get something that I really like, and I sit there just playing with all the settings for a long time and wasting time. But for whatever reason, I selected this one setting, and boom, I got this perfect canyon. I knew immediately it's exactly what I wanted, and I didn't even really have to do anything that crazy to get the results that I wanted. So I went ahead and set that up on the outskirts of the Utopia, or city. And for the next part, like I said, I knew I wanted the spaceship to fly through the canyon, and I've used a follow path and a curve setup on an object before, but it was just a super disaster, honestly. And even the the freeway sort of railway things that I put in going through the city are based off of a curve, and that is messed up. So I was a little bit intimidated for wanting to set up our spaceship to follow a curve to our landing spot, all the way from the canyon, through the canyon, to the city, through the city, and to our landing spot. Now normally I would just set up the keyframes and get it going all bad, and I shouldn't say bad, but it's a lot harder to do it that way. I know the curve is the right way to do it, so I decided to just go for it, and I had zero issues with it this time. The spaceship went perfectly through the city. I just messed with the rotations a little bit and the scale. I also parented an empty to our spaceship, as well as an empty to kind of our main plaza area, so I could have the camera parented to our spaceship empty so that the camera follows the spaceship. And then I added a damped track, I believe it's called, 2 of them, so that the camera has 2 focus points, one being on the empty in the spaceship and then one on the plaza, so that when the spaceship is flying through the canyon, I can shift the focus from the spaceship to the Utopia city while still following the spaceship, and then I can keyframe that to go back to focusing just on the spaceship. Sorry, that was probably explained not in the best way, but yeah, that's what we went for this. Next up, it was time to start adding textures. For the mountain, I have this nice rocky, mountainy kind of look. I think it's called mossy rock or something like that, but it's perfect what I wanted. I got it off of Polyhaven. And to add a little bit more substance into our mountain range, I wanted to put a river basin sort of thing in the bottom. So once again, this is where the asset browser comes in nice. I have a nice volumetric water cube ready to be placed at any point. You could also do this without the volumetric side of it. I think it's just a plane with the Voronoi texture into a color ramp into the base color, and then the roughness all the way down, I believe. You can also kind of get a watery texture. I also actually added another volumetric cube, which is kind of like a fog sort of ordeal. and it kind of gives us a little bit of a nice cloudy look at the top of our animation. So it's just a volume scatter node straight into the volume slot on the material output, and you just play with the density and the entroscopy to get like a nice foggy kind of. You can easily overdo it, so I go really light on mine in my opinion. Also, flying into our city, there's a gap from the mountain range into Utopia. So the thing is, something I wanted to add was a lot of greenery, like nice green hills, just something that looks super nice and like pleasant to look at. In the springtime where I live, we have like a lot of green hills, and it just looks super nice, like when it's bright, sunny, blue sky day. And also, going back to my references, a lot of the sci-fi cities that I look at, unlike Coruscant, which I've mentioned in this video already, have a lot of greenery and nice like plants kind of everywhere. So I wanted to at least surround our city with some nice green hills. After the hills and the extra little mountain ranges I put in the back there, I knew our city was lacking more buildings, and I was honestly just overthinking and stopping myself from just making stuff. So I just started grabbing buildings and twisting them, making stuff. Like, honestly, the flyby goes by pretty quick. I have a lot of standout buildings that already catch like your eye, so I just needed like filler buildings pretty much. So I got right to that and made some smaller kind of filler buildings. And kind of making these weird shapes, abstract looking structures, I shouldn't say I knew. At one point, I ended up taking a UV sphere, doing the whole wireframe thing, and surrounding the entire city into like this dome thing, which I thought was a cool concept, but it was just too much. So I kind of had that tucked in the back of my mind while making this whole little project, that I kind of wanted like a dome sort of thing around the building, around our city. So in making one of our weird little buildings, I came across this nice little shape that I liked here, and I made it way bigger than the entire city, and this is exactly what I was looking for. A nice little structure, nothing too overwhelming, but big enough to be like, whoa, this is like a thing for the city. I don't know what that thing is, but it's a thing, you know? So it was very like, not color-wise, but it reminded me of like a Halo-esque sort of thing for sure. And I liked it. Looking back at the process of making this without that little structure thing, I feel like it's kind of just bland. For some reason, I feel like it ties the whole, thing together, for lack of better words. Wrapping up here, I mentioned earlier in the video that I was going to add birds or like some animals, but I settled on some other flying cars. I found a free model on BlenderKit because I wanted our spaceship to stand out from the rest, but I didn't feel like modeling a whole nother spaceship, so I found a free one on BlenderKit, and I just duplicated that a bunch of times and had them keyframed flying in and out of the city, which is just a small detail that adds even more in. I added a few other buildings in as well, but that is going to wrap up this video for now. Let me know if you guys want to see a part 2. I'll come back. Honestly, I think I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to call it like the finer details of Utopia or something, I don't know. And I'll go back to our little person that was used as like scale reference at the beginning of the video, and we'll make some like smaller stuff around him, and I don't know, it'll be like a ground level version of this video, I guess. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Also, if you guys enjoyed, please drop a like and subscribe because it helps me out a lot. Thank you.